Chapter 5. Prince Ricardo crosses the path of history. I say, Jack, Prince Ricardo says one morning, here's a queer letter for me. King Peugeot had gone to a distant part of his dominions on business of importance, and the young people were sitting in the royal study. The letter, which Ricardo handed to Jacqueline, was written on a great broad sheet of paper, folded without any envelope, as was the custom then, and sealed with a huge seal in red wax. I don't know the arms, Ricardo said. Oh, Ricardo, how you do neglect your heraldry. Old Green Stocking is in despair of your ignorance. Now, Green Stocking was the chief herald of Mantufla, just like the Blue Mantle in England. Why, these are the royal arms of England, you great ignorant Dick. Rome isn't England, is it? And the postmark says Roma. That's Roman some lingo, I suspect. It is in Latin, I know. Mortus de Roma. Died in Rome. That's a Latin grammar. Let's see what the fellow says, anyhow, added Ricardo, breaking the seal. He grins. Prince, dear cousin, I say, Jacqueline. It's supposed to. Prince. Now it is Prince. He must be an ignorant fellow. People in glass houses should not stir thrones, Dick, said Jacqueline. His handsome self, Charles, P.W., said Ricardo, looking at the end. Who on earth can he be? Why does he not put P.W. Charles, if these are his initials? Look here, it's a rather long letter. You might read it to us, Jack. The princess took the epistle and began. How nice it smells, how scented. Paper's gilt-edged, too. Luxurious beggar, whoever he is, said Ricardo. Well, he says, Prince and dear cousin, you and me, oh, what grammar, are such the same age. I being 15 next birthday, I should be acquainted. As the world has heard of the famed Prince Ricardo, whose name is feared, his sword declared, and whoever may be monsters or tyrants, Prince, you may be well less informed about my situation. I have not killed any dragons, there being none of them here, but I have gone under fire at Greta. What's Greta, Dick? I've never heard of it, says Ricardo. Oh, it is in Italy. It was besieged. Goes on. I'm not told that I did not behave myself, nor disgrace the blood of Bruce. I've heard of Robert Bruce, said Dick. He was a man who did not kill the spider, but he cracked the head of Sir Bottom with one whack of his axe. I remember him well enough. Well, your correspondent seems to be a descendant of his. Well, that's getting more interesting, said Dick. I wish my father would go to war with somebody with the sort of sharpness I'd make an enemy whistle. Drive on, Jack. As a prince in distress, I appeal to your valor, so renowned in Europe. I am kept out of my own. My royal father, King James, this is the worst spelling I've ever saw. It means King James. My royal father, King James, being drove into exile by a cruel usurper, the Elector of Hanover. King James is old and likes a quiet life, but I have determined to make an effort. If I go alone, then Europe shall here be the Prince Charles. Having heard, as who is not, of your Royal Highness's courage and swordsmanship, I throw myself at your feet and implore you to assist a prince in distress. Let our swords be drawn together for the cause of freedom in an outraged country, my own. I remain, Prince and dear cousin, Charles, P.W. P.W. means Prince of Wales, added Jacqueline. He's turned out of England, you know, and he lives in Rome with his father. I like that chap, said Prince Ricardo. Does not spell very well, as you say, but I sometimes make mistakes myself. And I like his spirit. I've been looking out for an adventure, but the big game is getting shy, and my sword rusts in the scabbard. I'll tell you what, Jack, I've got an idea. I'll put him on the throne of his fathers. That's as easy as sowing peas. And as for that other fellow, the Elector, I'll send him back to Hanover, wherever that may be, and he can go back to electing, polling his vote in peace and quietness at home. Just wait till I spot him in places. The prince ran up to the turret, fetched the magic spyglass, and looked to London, Rome, and Hanover, as you would on a map. Oh, Dick, how do you mean to do it? Do it? Nothing simpler. I just take my 7-leg boots and run up to Rome, pick over Prince Charles, put him on the magic carpet, fly to London, slap the cap of darkness on him so nobody can see him, and sit him down on the throne of his fathers. Pick up the elector, carry him over his beloved Hanover, and the trick is done. What they call bloodless revolution in the history books. But if the English don't like Prince Charles, when they get him, like him? They're sure to like him, a young fellow like that. Besides, I'll take the sword with me in case of accidents. Dick, it is your father's rule that you never meddle in the affairs of other countries, never to start an expedition when he is not at home. Oh, he won't mind this time. There's no kind of danger. I'm sure he will approve of the principle of the thing. Kings must stick up for each other. Why, some elected characters might come here and kick us out. Your father is not the sort of king who is to be kicked out, said Jacqueline. But there was no use in talking to Dick. He made his simple preparations and announced that he would be back in time for luncheon. But what had poor Jacqueline to do? She was extremely anxious. She knew, as we saw, that King Crusoe had intended about changing the fairy things for others that did not work. She was certain Dick would get himself into a scrape. How was she to help him? She made up her mind quickly while Dick was putting his things together. She told the Queen, it was the nearest the truth she could think of, that she was going for a turn with Dick. Then she changed herself into a mosquito, a kind of gnat that bites, and hid herself under the fold of Dick's coat. Of course, he knew nothing about her being there. Then he started off in the 7-league boots, and before he could say Jack Robinson, he was in Rome, in the grounds of a splendid palace called the Villa Borghese. There he saw an elderly gentleman, great curled wig, sound asleep on a seat beneath a tree. The old gentleman had a long, pale, melancholy face. Across his breast was a blue ribbon with a star. Ah, how charged was King James with the handsome prince, who he had a love affair with Beatrix Esmond 30 years ago. Near him were two boys, not quite so old as Prince Ricardo. The younger was a pretty dark boy, with a little funny roundabout white wig. He was splendidly dressed in a light blue silk coat, and a delicate little lace scarf was tied around his neck, and lace ruffles falling down the little ringed hands. He had a pretty sword with a gold handle set in diamonds. In fact, here's a picture of a little dandy. The other had a broad Scotch bonnet and no wig, and beautiful silky yellow socks kept about his shoulders. He had laid his sword on the grass. He was dressed in a tartan, which Ricardo had never seen before, and he wore a kilt, which was new to Ricardo, who wondered at his bare legs, for he was wearing shoes with no stockings. In his hand was a curious club with a long, slim handle and a head made of heavy with lead, defended with a horn. With this he was aiming a little white ball, and suddenly he swung the club up and sent the ball out of the air in sight over several trees. Prince Ricardo stepped up to this boy and took off his cap and said, I think I have the honor of addressing the Prince of Wales. Prince Charles started at the sight of the gentleman in long riding boots, girt with a broadsword, which was not then generally worn, carrying a Persian rug under his arm. That is what I'm called, sir, he said, by those who give me the title which is right in my mind. May I inquire the reason which offers the pleasure of this unexpected interview? Oh, I'm Ricardo of Pantuflia, says Dick. I had a letter from you this morning, and believe you want to see me. From Pantuflia, sir, said Prince Charles. Well, that is hundreds of leagues away. It is a good distance, said Dick, but a mere step when you wear 7-league boots like mine. My dear Prince, said Charles, throwing himself into his arms with rapture, and kissing him in an Italian fashion, which Dick did not have like. You're indeed worthy of your reputation. These are celebrated 7-league boots. Harry, he cried to his brother, come here at once and let me present you to His Royal Highness, our illustrious ally, Prince Ricardo of Pantuflia. The Duke of York, Prince Ricardo of Pantuflia, gentlemen, know each other. The prince bowed in a most stately manner. I say, said Dick, who seldom at all up to the standard royal conversation, what's the game you're playing? It's new to me. You sent the ball a tremendous long shot. The game is called golf, and is a favourite pastime of loyal Scottish subjects, said Prince Charles. For that reason I may be able to share the amusements of my people, whom I soon hope to lead to glorious victory, followed by a peaceful and prosperous reign. I am acquiring a difficult art. I'm practicing walking without stockings, too, to harden my feet, he said in a familiar tone of voice. I fancy there are plenty of long marches before me, and I would not be a spear's length behind the hardiest Highlander. By Jove, I respect you, said Dick, with the greatest sincerity. But I don't think with me on your side you will need to make many marches. It will be on plain sailing. Pray explain your plans, said Prince Charles. The task of conquering back the throne of my father is not so simple as you seem to suppose. Oh, I've done a good many difficult things, said Dick, modestly. The conqueror of a magician, Gorgonzola, a giant you never knew that when he had enough, need not tell me that, said Prince Charles, with a courteous allusion of two of Ricardo's most prestigious adventurers. Oh, I've been very little proud of it, really, said Dick, blushing. Anyone could do as much with the fairy things, which no doubt you have heard. With my sword of sharpness and cap of darkness and so forth, you have a great pull over almost anything. And you really possess those talismans, said the prince. Oh, certainly I do. See how short a time I took from coming to your call from Pantufia? And his holy church, asked the Duke of York with anxiety, gave it her sanction and blessings to those instruments of an art, usually in her bosom forbidden? Oh, never mind the holy church, Harry, said Prince Charles. This is business. Besides, English or Protestants. I pray for their conversion daily, said the Duke of York. The end justifies the means, you know, answered Prince Charles. All's fair in love and war. I should think so, said Ricardo, especially given those brutes of electors. They give troublesome at home sometimes. You, too, are plagued with an elector, asked Prince Charles. An elector? Thousands of them, answered Dick, who never could understand anything about politics. Prince Charles looked puzzled, but requested Dick to explain his plan. They sat down on the grass, and Ricardo showed them how he meant to manage it, just as he had told Jacqueline. As he said, nothing could be simpler. Let's start at once, he said, inducing Prince Charles to sit down on the magic carpet. England, St. James's Place. But nothing happened. The carpet was not the right magic carpet, but the one which King Prigio had put in its place. Get on to England, I said, cried Dick. But there they remained, under a chestnut tree, sitting on a carpet above the flowery grass. Prince Charles leaped to his feet, his face like fire, his eyes glowing. Enough of this fooling, sir, he said. It is easy but cowardly to mock an unfortunate prince. Take your carpet and be off with you out of my garden, so the soldiers shall taste my club. There has been some mistake, Ricardo said. The wrong carpet has been brought by accident, or the carpet has lost its power. In the sacred city, blessed by the presence of His Holiness the Pope, and relics of so many martyrs and saints, magic may cease to be potent, said the Duke of York. Nonsense! You are an impostor, sir. Leave my presence, cried Prince Charles, lifting his golf club. Dick caught it out of his hand, broke it over his knee as a fine driver, as never came from Robertson's shop at St. Andrews. The quarrels of princes are not settled with a club, sir. Try and defend yourself, he said, kicking off his boots and standing his socks in the grass. Think of the horror of poor Jacqueline, who witnessed this terrible scene with passion from the fold of the Prince Ricardo's blows. What could the girl do to save the two princes, the hopes of one nation and the respectable minority of another one? In the moment Prince Charles's rapier was shining in the sunlight, and he fell on guard in the most elegant attitude, his left hand gracefully raised and curved. Dick drew his sword out, but as suddenly he threw it down again. Dang it! I can't hit you with this. It's a sort of sharpness that would cut through your steel and break your neck at a touch. He paused and thought. Let me beseech your Royal Highness, he said to the Duke of York, who was in terrible taking. Lend your blade to a hand not less royal than your own. Give it to him, Hal, said Prince Charles, who was standing with the point of his sword on the ground and the blade bent. He seems to believe his own nonsense. So the Duke yielded the sword. Dick took it, made a flourish, then rushed at Prince Charles. Now, Ricardo was always neglecting his fencing lessons. Where's the good of it, he said, the stamping and posturing and ha-haing? Sort of sharpness is enough for me. But now he could not, in honor, use a sort of sharpness. So he came, waving the rapier like a claymore, and made a slice of Prince Charles's head. The prince, very much surprised, parried Prime, riposted, and touched Dick on the hand. At this moment the Princess Jacqueline did what she should have done sooner. She flew out of Dick's coat and stung the old King James on his nose. The king awakened and nearly crushed the princes, so dangerous was his practice of magic art to the artist, and then leaped up, and saw Dick's blade flying through the air, glittering in the sun. The prince had disarmed him. "Hello, what's all this?" God, mes boys," cried the old king, in French and in English. And then he ran up, just in time to hear Prince Charles say, "Sir, take your life. You cannot strike an unarmed man. Prince you may be, but you have not learned the exercises of a gentleman." "What is all this, Carluxio?" cried the old king. "Swords out, brawling in my very presence, blood drawn," for Dick's hand was bleeding a good deal. Prince Charles, as briefly as possible, explained the unusual nature of their circumstances. "King must heard both sides," said King James. "What reply have you to make his Royal Highness's statements?" "The carpet would not work, sir," said Dick. "It never happened before. I had used its properties in my own sword," he explained its properties. "Prince of Wales would not be alive to tell the story. I can say no more beyond offering an apology for a disappointment which I could not have foreseen. A gentleman can only say that he is sorry. But wait," he added. "I can at least prove my confidence in some of my resources, not misplaced. Bid me bring you something, anything from the ends of the earth, and it shall be in your hands. I can't say fair." King James reflected, while Prince Ricardo was pulling on the 7-league boots, which he had kicked off to fight more freely, and while the Duke of York bandaged Dick's hand with a handkerchief. "Bring me," said his Majesty, "Lord Levitt's snuff-mull." "Where does he live?" said Dick. "At Grudlin, in Scotland," answered King James. Dick was out of sight before the words were fairly spoken, and in 10 minutes was back, bearing a large ram's horn snuff-box with a big carrying horn set at the top, and the Fraser arms. "Most astonishing," said King James. "A miracle," said the Duke of York. "You've entirely cleared your character," said the king. "Your honor is without a stain, though it is a pity about the carpet. Your nobility is not using your magical sword under the greatest provocation. Reconciles me to this fresh blighting of my hopes." "My allies fail me," said the poor king with a sigh. "You have alone failed with honor. Lucio, embrace the prince." And they fell into each other's arms. "Prince," said Dick, "you have taught me a lesson for which I shall not be ungrateful. With any blade, a gentleman should be able to hold his own in a fair fight. I shall no longer neglect my fencing presence." "With any blade," said Prince Charles, "I shall be happy to find Prince Ricardo by my side in a stricken field. We shall not part till I have induced you to accept the sword which I can never hope to draw against another adventurer so noble. In war, my weapon is a claymore." Here the prince offered Ricardo the ruby-studded hilt of his rapier, which had a beautiful white skin-sharp teeth. "You must accept it, sir," said King James. "The hilt holds the rubies of John Sobeski." "Thank you, Prince," said Ricardo, "for the weapon, which I shall learn to wield. I entreat you to honor me by receiving the fairy gifts, of which you do not need, the ring which makes all men faithful to the wearer." The Prince of Wales bowed and placed a talisman on his finger. Ricardo then, after a few words of courtesy on both parts, picked up his useless carpet and took his farewell of the royal party. With Jacqueline still hidden under his collar, returned at full speed, but with a heavy heart to Pantuflia, for the palace was just sounding for luncheon. Ricardo never interfered with foreign affairs again, but his ring proved very useful to Prince Charles, as you may have read in history.